This story is brought to you by the month of Lurve.
The month of Lurve.
The Magic Between Us by Rarity EQM. Read by Goombasa. It was beautiful. The warm summer sun crept through the sky and delicately slipped past the barricades of closed curtains and gloomy darkness. Twilight's room rarely had defenses against Celestia's golden reach, regardless of how hard she tried to blot out the sun. It seemed like Celestia went out of her way to awaken her prized pupil every morning, with glistening rays of light that found its way past Twilight's drapes every single time. Sometimes she just had to admit to herself her princess was a troll. Still, it's not like Twilight had been sleeping anyway. No, the unicorn had been wide awake for the better half of an hour, staring at the shadows that played across the ceiling and drifting endlessly across her plan. Back and forth again and again, a skipping record of words and reactions that looped endlessly in her imagination. She had it all planned out. A lovely breakfast, a morning stroll, and then she would ask her. That was simple. She'd ask the great and powerful Trixie Lulumoon, mare friend to Twilight Sparkle for 2.7 years today. Twilight let her gaze drift down to the blue mare sleeping beside her, nestled comfortably under the covers, and lost to Luna's dreamcraft, and gave a wistful sigh. Yeah, she'd ask her, just like that. A question that had been burning on Twilight's tongue for some time now. A simple question. She'd just ask, real casual. Nothing pronounced and bold or explosive, nothing crazy or wildly attention-grabbing. No, just 4 simple words. Will you marry me? Simple enough, it wasn't rocket science. It wasn't trying to graph radical principles and properties turned into patterns via transmorph spells on inanimate objects. It wasn't hard. 4 simple little words. 3 of those words she used every day, and the 4th one, marry. Well, that wasn't too difficult to say, right? It really was simple. After all, love was just a biological chemical reaction, and she was just following norms of society by turning it into a commitment. It was simple enough. Very simple. No big deal. Things would be very simple. She'd ask Trixie the simplistically simple question and go on about her day. Nothing would really change. Really. No need for a crowd. No, just a casual question. Wouldn't want to put Trixie on the spot or force her to decide with a crowd awaiting her answer, and while Trixie may favor the attention of a crowd and a loud, expansive, explosive proposal, Twilight had no such desires. Regardless, Trixie would of course answer yes, and that would be that. Just a simple day with a simple question.
You're up early,
a groggy voice sputtered, snapping Twilight from her thoughts and into a haze of confusion. She glanced around quietly for the speaker, before focusing on Trixie, who had pulled herself up onto her side, and now lay with her head supported under a single hoof. Twilight's mouth dropped open for a moment, then closed, and her lips twisted into a nerve-wracked smile. It was simple. It was very simple. This is simple. I was just, awake. I was awake, and, thinking, maybe about, will you marry me? The words tumbled out of her mouth before she could stop them. Rushed, panicked, screamed. No delightful breakfast, no brisk stroll around town. Just cold, raw emotion sputtering through an early morning fog of panic. Smooth, Twilight. Smooth. Trixie, for the most part, however, seemed nonplussed by Twilight's outburst. She casually shifted position in bed before twisting around to look at her mare friend for any signs of sarcasm or humor. When she couldn't find any, the cobalt pony rolled her eyes and slid warmly back under the covers and gave a dismal sigh and a dismissive flick of her hoof. No glitz, no glamour, no crowds holding their breath waiting for Trixie's answer. Geeky, boring Twilight. As if Trixie could have expected anything else. She smirked.
Marriage, Twilight? Really? Do you have any idea how much work goes into planning a wedding? Ugh. Trixie supposes you'll want Applejack to act as caterer, and Pinkie Pie to plan the entertainment. You'll of course have Rarity do the dresses. If she didn't, she'd pitch a fit, and we would never hear the end of it. You'll probably want something quiet, while Trixie would, of course, take the grand ballroom of Manhattan, which would mean we would need to get train tickets for every pony coming. Ugh. Trixie would request the Canterlot Quartet, but is sure you'd want some pony like DJ Pone 3 or something. That's the sort of music your friends like, isn't it? But we can't have either if Fluttershy wants to bring her bird choir, meaning music choices, out. Then we'd have to deal with whatever spectacular stunt Rainbow Dash wants to pull and find time to schedule for Trixie's fireworks. You'd probably want to wear white, which is so boring and utterly without any sense of style. Trixie cares not for traditional, but then she'd never hear the end of it from Rarity. She'd be a mess trying to find you something borrowed, something blue, something old, and something new, while we tried to book reservations at a nice fancy restaurant for every pony to eat at. Although there aren't a lot of fancy restaurants in Ponyville, so we'd have to go somewhere else, unless you wanted some candlelit dinner out on the plaza. Then there's the guest list, the presents, the RSVPs, the card decor, trying to find some time to send all of them, get everything done, and try to save the world, since something will come up, of course. Or you'll get kidnapped by changelings or something. One side of the cake will have to be chocolate, the other side vanilla. Then there are the food allergies to consider. The weather if you wanted an outdoor wedding, who would play what roles in Flower Girl's Ring Bearer, and can you even imagine our parents trying to get along? Ugh! It'll all be one enormous hassle.
Trixie grumbled quietly, and although Twilight could not speak at this point, she managed the barest hint of a nod. Her voice had long since died in her throat, choked away by a torrent of silent tears that threatened to race down her cheeks. Twilight hadn't thought this part through. Her offer rejected, and now she needed an excuse. Some reason to slip casually away and let her soul pour out through her tears. Not cry openly like a foal in front of Trixie. She was a responsible adult, and she could handle this. Keep your emotions in check, Twilight. But there wasn't any reason she could think of to excuse herself, and so the tears came silently, stroking her cheeks as she sat quietly in bed. That's when Trixie casually wrapped an arm around Twilight's middle and snuggled into the shuddering unicorn.
Twilight, I know what you're thinking, and Trixie hopes you realize she didn't say no,
Trixie whispered quietly, forcing both of Twilight's ears to perk. She gave a quiet sniffle and glanced down at the blue unicorn snuggled into her side.
It'll be a hassle, of course. Something Trixie shall only go through once. Once! So you had best make them the best years of Trixie's life.
Trixie grinned quietly. Twilight sniffled quietly, reaching a hoof up to rub at her eyes, ears perked furiously for any signs that Trixie was teasing her. But no. No, this was real. The sort of real Twilight had learned to spot while living with Trixie for years. She had that devious little smile wrapped around her lips, and Twilight gave a quiet sigh, and slowly, ever so slowly, she let herself smile. Trixie nodded her head, snuggling into Twilight's side like a pillow.
The great and powerful Trixie shall be the best wifey you've ever had, Twilight. You'd better give as good as you get.
She giggled and squeaked when the strike of Twilight's pillow caught her in the head. They tussled for a bit, the pillow fight turning into suckling kisses and loving squeezes as the morning drew on. Things didn't quite go according to plan, but they were wonderful nonetheless, with the promise of great adventure to be had. And brand new life with a mare she loved. The end.